Arrogant lawyer humiliates a black grandma in court revealed. She is the law's hidden co-author. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with tension as townspeople filled the benches. A sea of familiar faces shining in support of Grandma Ruby. Her heart raced, echoing the drum of the community that adored her. Grandma Ruby, tender, nurturing, and the warm heart of her small Midwestern town, now stood against the storm. Jeffrey, the young lawyer with a sharp suit and sharper tongue, faced her from the other side with a smirk that felt like daggers. He called her a background player, as if her years of love and labor meant nothing. Each word dripped with arrogance, but Ruby's spirit ignited in response. This was not just about her family's cherished business. It was about justice and her soul. Ruby felt the weight of generations behind her, a legacy built by her late husband's blood and sweat. Their store had been the heart of the community, where laughter bounced off the walls, mingling with the aroma of fresh-baked pies. But now a corporate giant's hunger for profit threatened to swallow that history whole. Ruby had organized communal dinners for decades, families sharing meals, tears, and joy. They had become her family, and as she stood here, she could almost feel their hands on her back, bolstering her resolve, but doubt seeped into the cracks of her heart, whispers of maybe it's time to let go echoing from those she held dear. Her grandkids, once bubbling with enthusiasm for their grandmother's stories, looked at her now with a shadow of concern. As she prepared for the next court hearing, the warmth of their family dinners felt like flickering candles fighting against an encroaching darkness. Both the courtroom and her family were becoming battlegrounds. Ruby took a deep breath and dug deep within herself. She pictured her husband's smile, felt the love of her grandchildren comforting her like a soft quilt. She wasn't just fighting for a store. She was battling for her love, her legacy, her identity. She flipped through dusty old boxes filled with papers of a life well lived and stumbled upon documents that held weighty memories. Hidden within those pages were sharp reminders of her own resilience. Laws she had quietly co-authored over the years to protect small businesses like hers, facts she had forgotten amidst the chaos. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Ruby prepared to present, the courtroom transformed into a battlefield of emotions. She stood tall, her heartbeat echoing in the silence. The realization of her contributions rippled through the audience. Her truth began to unfold, and she captured every gaze with the power of her quiet strength. As Jeffrey's smirk faltered, Ruby felt a tide of courage swelling inside her. She wasn't just a grandma. She was a warrior. Then, as the courtroom gripped the edges of their seats, Ruby took a bold stand. The gavel hovered above them like the promise of hope. Would her hidden strength surface in time? Would justice prevail, with her community's love lifting her high? Or would she lose everything dear to her? There, in that pivotal moment between fear and determination, hung the fate of her family and the town's soul. The drama of Grandma Ruby was only beginning, and the ultimate fight for justice loomed ahead. Ruby's voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, strength weaved itself into her words. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom. This isn't just about a store. It's about community, history, and love. Her words flowed with the passion of a river breaking through barriers. She recounted stories of laughter and unity, of late-night planning sessions with friends over sweet tea, and of the children who had grown up playing in the aisles of her beloved store. With each memory, her voice grew louder, filling the room with her spirit. Those in the audience exchanged glances, some nodding in recognition, the familiarity of her stories echoing in their hearts. Ruby felt their support radiating back to her, bolstering her resolve. Jeffrey shifted uncomfortably, his smirk replaced by a scowl. The transformation was palpable, not just in Ruby but in the collective consciousness of everyone in that room. This was not just a battle against an arrogant lawyer. It was a coming together of a community rallying around the heart that had nourished them. But as her momentum built, deeper fears clawed at her mind. Doubts lingered, like shadows dancing at the edge of her consciousness. What if she faltered? What if all of this effort was for nothing? Would her community still believe in her when the hammer fell, whether it be in triumph or defeat? Then, amidst her spiraling thoughts, a memory emerged. Ruby's hand shook slightly as she retrieved the old documents from the box. Surrounded by a sea of paper, she had once poured herself into crafting laws with the ink of her own experience, using her voices along with countless others who needed support. She had fought long before, without ever realizing the weight of her own power. "Your Honor," Ruby called out, her courage rekindling like the embers of a fire. "This isn't about a mere store. Every community deserves protection from those who wish to overlook their hard work and dedication. I've stood by my neighbors side by side. I've witnessed their struggles. I have co-authored laws that empower small businesses and foster community." Jeffrey's eyes narrowed, but Ruby's determination only grew, like an unyielding flame. She had tapped into something deeper now, an unwavering truth that coursed through every fiber of her being. And then it happened. As Ruby spoke, a voice from the back of the room called out, "We believe in you, Ruby." The words hung in the air, a lifeline anchoring her amidst the emotional tide. A wave of energy passed through the audience, revitalizing the courtroom, and the murmurs transformed into a chorus of support. "Together!" Someone shouted, igniting a spark within Ruby that she had never known existed. As Ruby stood there, surrounded by the echo of her community's love, she realized that this was more than just a legal fight. This was about reclaiming their shared history, reaffirming their identities. She could feel an unstoppable force swelling in her chest, the urge to rise up, to rally others around her, to stand strong against the shadows that threatened. She finished her statement with a fervent plea. "Let us not just fight for what we've built, but for what we can build together. For our legacy, for our children. They deserve a future." The courtroom erupted in applause, voices rising with a vibrant energy that filled the air with hope. Jeffrey stood there stunned, his confidence shaken. The gavel came down hard, silencing the excitement momentarily. But this was just the beginning. Ruby had ignited something far larger than herself. As the tension simmered, she felt the anticipation for the next steps build. The battle ahead would not be won in one day, but she was ready to wage that fight. As the judge prepared to call for the next hearing, Ruby's heart raced with what lay before her. Would the community back her in the months to come? Would the truth she uncovered unite their voices for a final confrontation against the corporate giant? The atmosphere thickened with suspense as Ruby's gaze met Jeffrey's. A silent declaration of war. In that charged moment, she knew one thing for certain. Every heart that beat in that courtroom was now part of her legacy, and they would march forward together. But as they stood on the brink of uniting, the question loomed: how far would Grandma Ruby go to protect everything she held dear? The chatter in the courtroom faded into an ominous silence as the judge prepared to speak. Ruby could feel the weight of all those eyes on her, a mixture of hope and expectation weaving through the air like a charged current. She stood straighter, her heart racing but steady, reminding herself that she was not alone. Everyone who had ever shopped or smiled in her store was behind her, and that thought surged through her like a lifeline. "Ms. Ruby Johnson," the judge said, his voice echoing around the room, "the court recognizes your impassioned plea. However, we must also consider the staunch legal precedents regarding commercial development in urban areas." He looked at Jeffrey, whose eyes glimmered with a smirk, an unsettling contrast to the gravity of the situation. The corners of Jeffrey's mouth curled up as if he'd already won it. Ruby's heart sank for a beat, but she took a deep breath, remembering the faces of the community, the resilience they shared. "Your Honor," she interjected, fighting against the tide of bureaucratic speak. "I request permission to call upon witnesses. People whose lives intersect with this store, whose stories are woven into its very fabric." The judge hesitated, glancing at Jeffrey. The lawyer's eyes sharpened, and Ruby could see his gears turning, already crafting a rebuttal. "You cannot simply call for witnesses without proper notice," he countered, his words dripping with condescension. "This is hardly a time for a community rally." Ruby felt her cheeks flush, but she let the fire fuel her. "It is exactly a time for rallying. My neighbors deserve a voice. They have seen what this store means. They have felt its presence in their lives." The atmosphere shifted. People in the audience began to nod, murmurs of agreement rising like waves. She could see their anticipation for authenticity, for the shared truth that only a community could offer. Very well, the judge said slowly, weighing the request. I will allow 3 witnesses from the community to speak. But prepare yourself, Ms. Johnson. They must be relevant to your case. Ruby's heart leapt. This was her opening the chance to highlight not just the legalistic concerns, but the emotional ties that bonded them all. She shot her gaze to the back of the room, where familiar faces clustered together, their expressions flickering with encouragement. Margot, Leon, Clyde, she called out, spotting the 3 loyal supporters who fought alongside her throughout the years. As they made their way to the stand, Ruby's pulse raced not just from anxiety, but from the thrill of witnessing a vision come to life. The courtroom felt electric. With every step, she could sense change rippling through her community, knotting together their shared history with purpose. Margot took the stand first, her voice warm and steady as she recounted the countless hours spent volunteering in Ruby's store. This place is my second home, she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It's where we held community meetings, celebrated birthdays, and even mourned losses. It's not just a store, it's a sanctuary. The audience responded with murmurs of agreement, Ruby feeling the strength of their voices pushing back against Jeffrey's looming presence. Next was Clyde, his gruff voice resonating in the courtroom. Every Saturday, I stop by for my coffee and a chat. It's more than just business. Ruby knows our names, she knows our dreams. Each voice that spoke bolstered Ruby's conviction. She watched Jeffrey seethe, his expression morphing from disbelief to annoyance as he realized the tide was changing. But just as triumph seemed within reach, a commotion erupted at the back of the courtroom. A newcomer had entered, and silence fell as every head turned toward the door. Ruby squinted, trying to see through the sea of bodies. Who could it be? And then it hit her. The figure stepped forward, her heart pounding with uncertainty and curiosity. The room seemed to hold its breath as the woman approached, her presence demanding attention. What surprise did she bring? With the momentum shifting and new layers unfolding, Ruby suddenly realized that the fight was not just for the store. It was for a future woven from their deepest memories and shared aspirations. What did this newcomer have to say that could change everything? The murmur grew in the courtroom, a ripple of confusion and intrigue. Ruby leaned forward, straining to get a better look at the woman who had just walked in. She had an air of quiet confidence, with silver-streaked hair pulled back, dressed in simple yet elegant clothes. It was Claire, the town's former councilwoman. Ruby could hardly believe her eyes. Your Honor, Claire said, her voice steady, cutting through the noise. I believe I have spoken before in defense of Ms. Johnson's store. I've come to add my voice today. Ruby felt a rush of hope. Claire was beloved in their community, an advocate who fought fiercely for residents' rights. But Jeffrey's smirk returned, and Ruby sensed the tension in the room build like a thunderstorm brewing overhead. Objection! Jeffrey shouted, rising suddenly. This witness has not been on the list submitted prior. She has no relevance to this case. But the judge raised a hand, halting him. Let us hear from Ms. Wilkins, he said, his tone firm. Claire took a deep breath to calm herself. She looked around, her eyes meeting Ruby's, and Ruby could see the strength in them. I once heard the phrase, "It takes a village," and I know, as a councilwoman, the truth in that statement. Ruby's store has been a cornerstone for our village, a place where we share not only groceries but our lives. Ruby felt tears threaten to spill, but she held them at bay. Claire continued, her voice growing stronger. Urban development isn't merely about building structures. It's about nurturing communities. If we lose this store, we lose a vital part of our identity. The audience erupted in soft applause, and Ruby could hear quiet calls of encouragement from her supporters. Claire turned her gaze to the other side of the room, where Jeffrey still stood, arms crossed defiantly. Mr. Evans, she said, you may see this as a simple business transaction, but for us this is personal. Ruby's store is a sanctuary, as Margot said. It's the pulse of our neighborhood. The judge sat silently, taking it all in. Ruby felt a flicker of strength building, the crowd beginning to shift their energy like a tide rising toward victory. Jeffrey's expression darkened, and Ruby readied herself for whatever scathing remark might come next. He leaned into the microphone, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Sanctuary indeed. Are we to allow a grocery store to dictate the city's direction? What about progress? Claire met his gaze directly. Progress? Or destruction? It seems convenient for you to mask opportunism with the guise of progress. Gasps echoed through the courtroom, and uncertainty started to creep into Jeffrey's demeanor. Ruby could hardly breathe, feeling the weight of the moment swell. This wasn't just Claire talking. This was the whole community rising in defense. She felt the connection between them, their collective strength coiling around her like a protective barrier. Jeffrey, cornered now, shook his head, trying to regain control. "Let us not get emotional," he shot back, his voice wavering slightly. "This is about the law." But isn't it also about justice?" Claire countered, tossing back that question like a grenade. "Sometimes the law doesn't speak for the people. Sometimes it's up to us." Before she could finish, Jeffrey interrupted, shouting once more, "Let us stop pretending as if this place is critical to the future of our city." The audience began to murmur again, a stark contrast to Jeffrey's words. Ruby felt her heart pulse faster, feeling her community tethered together by the fight. The judge frowned, pressing his fingers to his temple as if trying to filter through the chaos. "Order in the court," he commanded. Ruby could feel the tension rise. The stakes had shifted, the battle intensifying. Suddenly, another loud interruption rang through the courtroom, this time from the back. "And what if I told you," a booming voice called out, "that the very foundation of your development proposal is built on flawed principles stretched to fit your narrative?" Everyone turned sharply. Ruby's heart raced again. Who was this newcomer? What truth could they possibly illuminate that would strike a blow against Jeffrey's arguments? As the atmosphere thickened with anticipation, Ruby gripped the edge of the stand, ready to hear this new voice that had just stepped into the arena. Would they rally behind her? Or did they come with unexpected revelations of their own? The flow of the courtroom had morphed into an unpredictable current, and Ruby could only brace herself for the tide that might wash over them all next. The courtroom door swung open, and in walked a man Ruby recognized instantly, Dr. Harold Thompson, a local historian who had devoted years to preserving the town's heritage. He was well known but equally well liked, admired for his passion and dedication. Today, however, his usually cheerful demeanor was overshadowed by grim determination. "Dr. Thompson!" Claire exclaimed, stepping aside as the historian approached the front. A murmur swept through the spectators as they began to piece together his connection to the case. "Your Honor, if I may?" Harold held up his hand, a hint of urgency in his voice. The judge nodded, allowing him to continue. "Thank you," he began, his gaze shifting from Jeffrey to the audience. "I've spent years studying this town's history, and I can tell you the very essence of what makes us who we are is tied to the businesses like Ruby's." His voice echoed with conviction. "The store isn't merely a building. It's a living archive of our community's story." A ripple of approval surged through the crowd, and Ruby's heart swelled. For so long she had felt alone in this fight. "Every item on the shelves tells a story," Harold went on, "from the local produce grown by our neighbors to the goods brought in from far and wide. Each purchase is a stitch in the fabric of our community. Allowing this store to be erased in favor of a soulless development is not progress. It's a disservice to our past and our future." Ruby glanced over at Jeffrey, who was visibly rattled. He clenched his fists, jaw tight, as he glared at Harold. "Objection!" he finally spat out, voice shaking. "Your witness is attempting to conflate nostalgia with facts. This case is about legality, not folklore." Claire stepped forward. "Isn't it folklore that binds us? Isn't it our stories that shape the laws we live by?" Her words were like a lifeline, and Ruby held on tightly. If we neglect the significance of those stories, what do we become? A city without a heart? As if awakening from a deep slumber, the audience stirred, voices rising in agreement. The weight of collective memory hung thick in the air, a powerful undercurrent pushing against Jeffrey's arrogance. Dr. Thompson looked at Ruby, his expression softening as he sensed her struggle. "Ruby, your store is a testament to resilience," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "It stands as proof that small acts of courage can invoke change. You've created a refuge for families. You've fostered relationships." Tears brimmed in Ruby's eyes. She had worried about the store being just a business, but to see it affirmed as a lifeline was uplifting. The crowd's mood was electric, the energy palpable. A sense of unity was forming, fueling their collective resolve. Jeffrey, desperate to regain control, pointed a finger at Harold. What makes you think your opinion holds any weight here? This is a legal matter. His voice faltered, cracks apparent as the weight of the room pressed down on him. And then there was silence. The tension wrapped around everyone, heavy yet charged with potential. Dr. Thompson stood his ground, the power of his presence silencing the accusations. You may think the law is absolute, but laws are shaped by the communities they govern. And communities deserve to be heard. Ruby felt as if she were on the verge of a transformational breakthrough. This wasn't just a battle for her store, it was a fight for their lives. Their stories, their identity. She drew in a breath, hoping to harness the strength of everyone gathered. The judge's gavel struck the desk, reverberating through the charged silence around them. Order, he called, but the tremors of uncertainty were forming cracks in Jeffrey's confident facade. Ruby looked around the room, gathering her courage while the energy pulsed like a heartbeat. She could feel it, the weight of the community and their hopes resting on her shoulders. Time seemed to stand still until, finally, someone in the crowd spoke up, their voice echoing through the stillness. Tell him the truth, Ruby. Tell him who you are. The room buzzed with anticipation as she stood at the edge of her resolve. The moment had arrived. She knew she had to speak, not just for herself but for everyone who believed in their cause. But as she prepared to take the leap, a thought struck terror in her heart. What truth was she ready to share? What would happen if her next words changed everything? In that instant, Ruby was acutely aware that the stakes had never been higher. Would she dive into the depths of her own story, revealing what she had hid for too long? The courtroom held its breath. Could she find a way to unite their voices into one? Would she be brave enough to shape her own narrative and take a stand? The decision loomed before her, pulse racing, the spotlight warming her skin. Everyone was watching now. Ruby's heart raced as she gazed at the expectant faces before her. It was as if every person in the room was holding their breath, willing her to find the words that would change everything. The memories flooded her mind, her father teaching her how to set up shop, the laughter of children chasing each other around the store, the friendships forged over shared stories about the past. Could she really lay it all bare? She began, her voice shaking as she fought against the lump in her throat. My store, it's more than just a building. It's a place of connection. When you walk through those doors, you walk into decades of history. My history. The words tumbled out, raw and unrefined, but she didn't stop. You see, I carry the weight of my family's dreams. We opened this store after countless sacrifices. The audience leaned in closer, and she felt their energy shifting toward her. With newfound strength, she continued, I'm not just Ruby, the business owner. I'm Ruby, the daughter of this community. My parents sacrificed everything to turn this dream into reality. A young boy in the front row, the same age as her nephew, grinned up at her, and she felt a warmth wash over her. I want the kids in this town to grow up knowing that they belong to something bigger than themselves, that they too can take risks and build lives that matter. Her breath came faster, words now flowing like water from a spring. There are nights when I weave my family's stories into the fabric of our community. I am a storyteller, and this store is my narrative, the heart of us all. The crowd erupted into soft applause, but she pressed on, determined to make her stand count. I fought to keep it alive, not just because I want to, because I have to, because if I don't, who will? This isn't just about me. It's about every family who has ever walked through those doors. It's about their hopes, their dreams. Jeffrey was on his feet again, face flushed with anger. Your Honor, this testimony is nothing but emotion. No facts. It's irrelevant. His voice cracked, but Ruby could see his bravado slipping. Claire stepped in, calm and composed. If this case is about facts alone, then we're missing the very reason for the law's existence. Facts mean nothing without the feelings and histories behind them. They are the framework for our moral compass. Ruby could see the doubt beginning to flicker in the eyes of the judge. Perhaps, just perhaps, the community's spirit was seeping into the very bones of this courtroom. Each witness, each story was building a tapestry that they all shared. Ruby, Dr. Thompson urged gently, don't forget to mention your role in the community's development. The way you've mentored young entrepreneurs, providing them a platform to showcase their crafts. There's power in that. Your story isn't just personal. It's foundational. Ruby's heart swelled further as she recalled meeting so many people, helping them chase their passion. You're right, Dr. Thompson. I've always believed in sharing the spotlight. This store isn't just mine. It's a stage where many can shine. A woman from the back called out, "We're with you, Ruby." Echoes of support spread through the crowd, amplifying her courage. But just as she thought she was gaining momentum, a restless murmur began to rise in response to Jeffrey's refusals. "We need to make our needs and values clear," a voice shouted, sparking a chorus of agreement. Ruby took a moment, breathing in the strong air of solidarity. If we let our history be bulldozed over by corporate greed, what are we allowing to happen to our children? We're building more than a business, we're building a legacy. As her last words hung in the air, a heavy silence followed, laced with hope and uncertainty. Jeffrey struggled visibly now, his composure wavering. Ruby sensed something significant shifting, but the outcome still hung in the balance. What if Jeffrey had bigger secrets? What if he couldn't just lose this case but lost more than his reputation? The thought sent a jolt of anticipation through her. Could her words truly create a ripple that would change fate's course? In that moment, Ruby understood that her battle went beyond the store. This was about hope, about resilience, and ultimately about community. And as she held the crowd's gaze, the judge's eyes bore down on her with scrutiny. What decision might he render next? Ruby's pulse quickened as the judge leaned back in his chair, fingers tented beneath his chin. The room felt electric, charged with emotions that had been building for years. She could sense the anticipation, the hunger for justice rippling through the audience. It was a mix of hope and fear, and she clung to that hope tightly. With a deep breath, she spoke again, her words steadying now. "It's not just about this courtroom or even this case. It's about who we choose to be as a community. We are simply innovators, creators, and dreamers. When you think of your own dreams, remember that ours are intertwined in every brick of this store." Jeffrey scoffed, crossing his arms as if to shield himself from her words. "Is this really the best you can do, Ruby? Dreaming isn't enough to keep a business afloat. You need facts, statistics. Facts can't encapsulate a human spirit," Ruby interjected, never breaking eye contact with him. The crowd's whispers surged again, as if they were echoing her defiance. Dr. Thompson quietly encouraged, "You've got this, Ruby. Just stick to your truth." She thought of the children who visited her store, eyes wide with wonder, soaking up stories, gripping new books. "I remember a little girl named Mia. Every Saturday, she came in with her allowance, bursting with the excitement of picking her next adventure. When she walked through those doors, she didn't just buy a book. She entered a world where her imagination could dance freely." Ruby paused, letting the narrative sink in. Faces in the audience softened, smiles appearing, memories roaring to life. She continued, "If we lose this store to the weight of profit margins and cold deal-making, we're severing a thread that weaves us all together. It's where dreams are nurtured, and community is birthed." But Jeffrey's eyes narrowed, a predatory glint flickering in their depths. "Dreams don't pay the bills, Ruby. How do you plan to keep the lights on if you can't adapt?" Her stomach churned, but she pressed on. "Adaptation is key, I agree. But not at the cost of our essence. With our stories and connections as our foundation, we've created resilience. We just need to believe that it matters. We don't have to compromise who we are in order to thrive." The audience seemed spellbound, drawn into her vision of a vibrant, inclusive community. For the first time, she sensed a fracture in Jeffrey's armor. His bravado started to crumble beneath the weight of her sincerity. Just then, the judge spoke, breaking the tension. "Mr. Turner, the court acknowledges that it values evidence, and Ms. Ruby, your narrative adds a crucial layer to this case. However, we cannot proceed without knowing the financial implications of your store's operation under your plan. You must demonstrate fiscal viability alongside your arguments." Jeffrey smirked. "Finally, something I can work with. If this store is as vital as you claim, let us see the numbers that prove it." But rather than panic, Ruby felt a surge of determination. She had always known that her journey was about more than just sales. It was about lives transformed. "You want numbers? I'll show you the value of every handshake, every story shared. It's far greater than any financial statement can convey." As Ruby finished speaking, a profound silence fell over the room. Was this the moment where her community truly rallied around her? And then a voice broke from the back. Clear and loud, "We believe in you, Ruby." This only solidified the atmosphere of solidarity, and she saw people nodding, murmuring their agreement, ready to stand with her. Ruby turned her gaze back to the judge. In that moment she felt a new wave of confidence. She was not just another business owner. She was the lighthouse guiding them all home. But as the judge prepared to render a decision, fear pierced her heart. What if it wasn't the outcome they all hoped for? What if she was on the brink of losing everything? The tension thickened, and she realized that the true battle had just begun. Would their collective voices be enough to withstand the looming threat? "Let us see what tomorrow brings," she whispered under her breath, gripping the edge of the stand as if it were a lifeline. Ruby's heart raced as she absently traced the edge of the stand with her fingers, feeling the cool wood beneath her touch. The judge looked down at his notes, the glint of his glasses catching the light just right, taking his time before he spoke again. Anticipation hung in the air, a precarious blend of hope and anxiety. "All right, Ms. Ruby," he began, lifting his gaze. "You've stirred emotion and passion in this courtroom today. But we need clarity. Can you present a plan that shows how this store not only survives but thrives?" The weight of his words pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. Her mind raced, pulling together fragments of ideas and hopes into something coherent. Suddenly, the faces of all those who had supported her, friends, customers, and community members, flashed through her memory, their belief in her like a steady drumbeat. "Your Honor," she started, her voice steady despite her trembling palms, "I've always believed that a business is more than a profit and loss statement." She locked eyes with Dr. Thompson, who nodded encouragingly. "It's about nurturing relationships and creating spaces where people feel seen and heard." She launched into a vision, weaving storytelling with tangible ideas. "We can have monthly events, author readings, book signings, community discussion forums. We can build programs that foster literacy and love for reading among our youth. By creating a space that services the community's needs, we're not just selling books. We're building a legacy." Jeffrey shifted in his chair, rolling his eyes in disbelief. "This all sounds lovely, Ruby, but can you offer anything concrete?" The crowd murmured their frustration. Ruby could feel eyes widening, shaking heads, and it fueled her resolve. "I can show the impact of our events, Mr. Turner. Each event fosters connections, more sales, new visitors, and returns. It's a cycle of reinvestment into our community." As she spoke, every hand she had shaken, every smile exchanged in her store, lent strength to her words. Every child who leaves with a new book carries the potential to become the next great author, innovator, or leader. "Isn't that worth celebrating?" "Sounds good in theory," Jeffrey replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But tell me, how much can you expect to sell during these events? We can project increased sales based on past events. I know our community. I know what they want. I'm in the trenches with them every single day." Ruby continued, painting a vivid picture of the store bustling with life, families gathered for book discussions, teens introducing their favorite graphic novels to a more significant audience. She could practically hear the laughter echoing in the aisles, the excitement palpable in the air. The skeptical looks began to soften, faces turning towards Ruby as people around her found wings to rise with her efforts. "Judge, if we're going to stay competitive, we need to focus on bringing people together. And if this store fails, the repercussions aren't just numbers, it's a loss of culture, community, and yes, a world where dreams are born. I refuse to let that happen." As she spoke these last words, a light seemed to ignite in the eyes of those around her. Someone shouted again, "We believe in you, Ruby." And soon the chorus grew, filling the courtroom with voices affirming her vision. But amidst the hope swirling around her, a shadow of doubt crept in. What if this collective emotion wasn't enough? How much weight could their voices truly carry? The judge's gavel echoed like a heartbeat as he prepared to speak again. "Ruby, your conviction is inspiring, but..." The words hung in the air like a promise of gravity. What would he say next? Would there be a path forward? Or was this court date just one more hurdle in an uphill battle? She needed to stay strong. She nodded, affirming to herself that she could pivot any obstacles into opportunities. Would they all continue to stand by her as the reality of her dreams loomed ahead? A storm of emotions churned within her, anticipation heavy in the air. "I can face whatever comes next." She whispered to herself, wondering if this was the turning point towards something greater, or the beginning of an even deeper struggle. Ruby inhaled sharply as the judge's gavel hit the wood, the sound cutting through the electrifying atmosphere of the courtroom. "Ms. Ruby," he continued, his voice steady yet gentle, "we need a solid plan with financial numbers. The court requires assurance that this will not only survive but flourish in today's market." Her heart sank for a brief moment. Numbers were always intimidating, but she had never been one to back down from a challenge. Focusing herself, she recalled the ledgers at home, the projections she had whispered to herself on sleepless nights. "Your Honor, I can provide detailed projections based on previous events and customer engagement metrics." She glanced at Dr. Thompson for support, and he smiled, encouraging her. "From our last community festival," she explained, "we saw a 30% increase in sales over the weekend compared to regular weeks. These community events create excitement and generate interest. The people in this town care about their bookstore." Jeffrey snickered from his seat, but Ruby pressed on. "In the past year alone, our social media activity has doubled. People want to connect. They want to invest in their local businesses." Each word felt like building blocks, strengthening her argument, reinforcing her connection to the people surrounding her. "Let us also talk about our partnerships," she added, her voice growing stronger. "We can collaborate with local schools, offer discounted rates for bulk book orders. We can even create family packages geared towards fostering that love for reading." The murmurs surged, and she felt the courtroom sway like a tide of support. She could see the emotions in the faces around her. Mothers nodding along, fathers leaning in to catch every word, seniors with tears glimmering in their eyes. They were rooting for her, not just a store, but a community anchored in shared experiences. "Moreover," she continued, "if we create a vibrant atmosphere, families will gather and become part of our events, not merely customers, but advocates, promoters of our store." Uncertainty crept in again. But maybe I'm just dreaming. Maybe this is a futile endeavor at that moment. The judge raised his hand. "Ms. Ruby, please understand that I am not dismissing your vision. However, I need tangible metrics to move forward. I need commitments you can stand by." "Absolutely, Your Honor." Ruby felt her resolve solidify. "If we foster connections and trust, the numbers will follow. We need to show the community that this bookstore is not just a stop, but a destination." A wave of determination washed over her. She wouldn't just battle for the store. She was fighting for their home, creating a legacy for generations to come. "Let us put a plan in writing," she blurted out. "I'm prepared to host regular strategy meetings to review our growth, our engagement, and to pivot as we see fit. What do you think?" Silence fell momentarily, and then the judge leaned forward, intrigued. A focused approach with measurable growth could sway the court. "Can you outline deadlines and estimates?" Her mind erupted with ideas, scribbling them in the air with her hands as she spoke. "In 6 months, we aim for a clear increase in visitor numbers by 20%. By the next year, we plan an annual festival, setting projections based on our community's feedback." Ruby looked around, her eyes finding familiar faces, starting to put hope into action. A sense of purpose built inside her, spiraling outward into the room. "Are these bold enough?" she concluded, her heart pounding as if it could physically reach out to everyone present. A buzz of conversation began to sweep across the room, momentum shifting towards her. Ruby felt her pulse quicken, the air thick with possibility. But then she caught a glint of doubt in Jeffrey's eyes, his skepticism still lurking. "Do you really think your plans can convince us? You're talking big now, but can you deliver?" Her stomach twisted, suddenly feeling the pressure of that expectation. Was she setting herself up for failure? What if the efforts of the community couldn't translate into the numbers they needed? "Everyone's belief in me is powerful," Ruby countered, feeling fierce. "But what I need to show them and myself is that I can turn this belief into action." As she steadied herself, glancing towards the judge, she realized an unsettling truth. This was about more than her bookstore. It was about trust, community, and faith. But was that faith enough to confront the daunting task ahead? The gavel struck again, a reminder of time running out, a reminder that the end was near. "Let us take a short recess," the judge announced, bringing a wave of uncertainty. Ruby looked around the room, a mix of excitement and terror thrilling her spine. What happened next? Would their dreams materialize? Or would the weight of numbers drag everything down? As the courtroom buzzed, she wondered. Could the hope she felt ignite a fire that would change everything? The courtroom buzzed with whispers, the excitement clashing with anxiety as Ruby sat engrossed in her thoughts. This was it. The pivotal moment had arrived. She glanced around at the familiar faces, her family, friends, and the community she had fought so hard to protect. They were all here for her. Would they rally behind her vision? As the recess ended, Ruby took a deep breath. Her heart raced as the judge returned to his seat, the air thick with anticipation. The gavel strike echoed through the room, signaling the moment they had waited for. "Ms. Ruby," he said, peering through his glasses, "you were discussing plans for measurable success?" "Yes, Your Honor," she responded, determination swelling within her. "We want to reconnect with our community in ways that go beyond our walls. We want to create a space where conversations flourish and dreams are born." The judge nodded, encouraging her. "Please elaborate." Ruby leaned forward, charging her words with passion. "We'll implement monthly community themes, cooking nights, reading events for children, even local artist showcases. Each brings people in, encourages them to share, and rekindles our bonds. It's our story woven together." The atmosphere shifted as her words took root. Faces glimmered in agreement and hope. She pressed on, painting a picture of what they could create. "With every event, we'll gather data, foot traffic, attendance rates, and community surveys. In 6 months, I aim for a 20% increase in visitors. Together we'll evolve, adapting to what our town desires." The excitement radiating from the crowd pushed her forward. A voice near the front called out, "That's the spirit, Ruby." As she continued, Ruby's conviction rippled through the room. "And Your Honor," she added, "will foster partnerships with local schools, creating programs for students where they can earn reading rewards. Children will feel the magic of stories, while connecting their education to our community efforts. You see," Ruby continued, "this store isn't just retail. It's a living, breathing heartbeat of who we are. We are not just fighting for survival. We are fighting for our community's spirit." The judge's expression softened, absorbing her words. Jeffrey squirmed in his seat, realizing the momentum shifting under him. Ruby's undeniable passion poured forth as she added, "Our store is a sanctuary, and if we strike down this sanctuary, we'll erase valuable narrative stories that matter." Voices in the audience murmured with fervor, a wave of agreement echoing. Then, with a deep breath, Ruby turned to the judge directly. "Your Honor, if you allow us to move forward, I'm ready to show you our financial forecasts, my commitments and actions. This is about countering apathy with action." "Mr. Turner," the judge turned to Jeffrey, who appeared increasingly agitated, "do you have anything to add?" Jeffrey's lips thinned, and his brow furrowed as he leaned forward. "While Ruby's enthusiasm is commendable, it doesn't negate the financial risks involved. Business is not about hope. It's about cold, hard facts." Ruby sensed the challenge. She knew what was at stake. "But what brings those facts to life, Jeffrey? Isn't at the heart behind them?" She shot back. "If we fail to recognize the value of our shared journeys, we're no longer just losing a store, we're losing ourselves." Silence fell, heavy and pregnant with realization. Ruby's voice cut through that silence as she said, "We have to remind ourselves of why we exist, for every child whose dreams begin at our door. We're talking about more than economics. It's about what happens when communities support each other. When we stand together, we thrive." She held the eyes of the audience steadily, the energy in the room charged with solidarity. Just then, Claire rose from her seat. The former councilwoman's voice rang out like a bell. "Your Honor, I would like to testify," she declared, stepping forward. Ruby embodies resilience, and this community's support illustrates that spirit. "Please consider what it means for us to lose this connection." The courtroom erupted in applause, claps, and cheers spiraling upward toward the ceiling. Even the judge allowed a slight smile to break through his stoic face. "Ms. Wilkins," he said, raising his hand, "you speak passionately, but the law does require more than feeling. Still, it is important to realize that this collective history cannot be ignored." Ruby, buoyed by Claire and her community's encouragement, leaned forward. "We're prepared to showcase the numbers, Your Honor. We are. Our history is not mere nostalgia. It is a foundation worth investing in, a truth that withstands the trials of time and industry." The crowd roared again, the energy building to an inspiring crescendo. Enough, Jeffrey barked, but his voice snarled in desperation, reflective of the shifting tide. Make your decision, Your Honor. Someone yelled out, and Ruby felt the energy flex around them like a living being. The judge took a slow breath, eyes scanning the courtroom filled with hope-filled faces. I need time to consider this. Ruby's heart sank for a second, but was quickly buoyed by the warmth surrounding her. The judge continued, however, I am inclined to allow a temporary stay on the development while I weigh the implications of this case deeper. I believe there is a powerful story at play here that warrants consideration. Cheers erupted like fireworks as Ruby felt a wave of relief sweep over her. She grasped Claire's hand, tears of gratitude filling her eyes. The community felt alive, connected, ready to forge ahead. As the judge banged his gavel, sealing the moment, Ruby looked around, her heart bursting with love. No matter what happened next, she had already won the greatest battle standing amongst those she loved, fighting for a future that honored their shared past. Together they would rise, and together, they had built a legacy worth fighting for. You need to subscribe now to stay part of this incredible journey. Don't wait not even one more second to share this powerful transformation with at least 5 friends who need to feel this hope. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for stories that matter. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. Let us make our voices heard.